Hello class, welcome back. Today we're going to be taking up the problem of angular line measurement, and just as it says, it's about measuring. So we started our class off a couple of weeks ago with gesture drawing, and if you remember back, gesture drawing was a very free, loose type of drawing that you did, and that allowed you to be spontaneous and free and full of life. Angular line now is going to be kind of like gesture, but no life to it. Basically, you're going to be drawing something by a series of straight lines, but we're going to have to measure the heights and widths and watch the angles. So we're going to be sighting with a stick. So this stick that I have here, a little skewer stick for shish kebab, is something that you can certainly use. I showed it to you on the very first day of the class. If you remember back, hopefully you all got something like this, or a knitting needle, because today they're going to come in handy. So with a sighting stick, one of the ways that we use this is when we're trying to get angles, rather than tipping something in space to get an angle like this, we keep it like the face of a clock. And if it's 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock, so I can wink an eye and I can turn it to whatever angle it happens to be. We never tilt it in space. We always keep it this way. We're going to be measuring our objects this way. We are going to be using the envelope and notional space, things that we've talked a little bit about up to this point. So if you pull out the handout that I gave you on the first day, and it's going to be dealing with, it's going to say angular line measurement on it, and I'll give you a second to get that. When you look at the very first page of the angular line, is what you're going to see is a little drawing by Leonardo da Vinci. Now, one of the reasons I put this in here is you're going to see horizontal lines crossing over the face. And if you look at it very carefully, you're going to notice from his chin, and I'm going to measure it here, and you're going to do the same with your stick, or if you don't have one, use a pencil. From the chin to the bottom of the nose, if you mark the chin with your index finger, and now I move it up, you're going to get it to his eyebrow. He's got another guideline. You move it up one more time, you're at another guideline. That's the hairline. This is where the cranium meets the hairline. So he's showing you that the head is divided into thirds. And he's using what we call comparative measurements. So he's comparing chin to base of nose to brow, brow to there. It'll be the same that we're going to be doing in a moment with an object. I'll be comparing one part to the next part to the next part, and you'll be doing the same. So that's called comparative measurements. He does have another relationship going on here, and comparative, and the one's known as relational. So comparative, you're comparing. Relational, he's taken the bottom of the ear and he's relating it horizontally to the bottom of the nose and the top of the ear to the top of the brow. That's where we measure relationships. So we take the top of the brow, it'll come to my ear, the bottom of the nose, it'll go to my ear, bottom of my ear. We're relating one thing to the next by using a stick to do it. So that's what this is about. It's about measurement, and we're going to be doing a lot of it today. Today, there's not a lot creative with this other than how we break our straight lines. You're going to be individualistic about that. Everybody will do it different. But it's going to be a lot of analytical measuring. And this is going to come together eventually with our freehand sketching. Both you need in order to create good drawings. You need measurement, analytical thought, as well as very free, beautiful movements that you come up with because of your own personality. Now, when you look at your second page, it will be this one that I have pinned up. Now they're showing the highest point to the lowest point, and is what he's doing. He's showing his widest point here coming across. So with the envelope, if I took a vertical line and ran it through here, which I think I might for you guys. So if I take a vertical line through his highest point, he's going to do this. Even though he's got this, because ultimately, when you look at it, his axis line, as we talked about the very first day, the axis line, the longest axis line of something becomes important. This is a vertical line. This is his predominant axis line. So now he's taken his predominant axis line because of this foot, which is going to fall here, of course. If I put it on this one, it's going to fall where he's got the envelope. And then he's taking his widest points, which he's doing this. And so now he's got his width. You guys are going to be measuring width into a high point. In this case, it would come to the base of the breast. We're going to have to figure that out on the objects we draw. So then he takes from the widest to the highest, and he draws an envelope around it. He's extending this down because it's secondary, and then he's drawing around it like you see. So once the figure is blocked into some simple configuration, he now knows this point to this point to this point, this triangle is accurate. This center line is now in the right place on a vertical line. And so he's already got that figured out. There's no details. And then he's going to go after his next broadest lines. As you can see, he's going to place in an angle for a shoulder. He's going to watch the base of a rib cage. And he's going to put these very general lines. The next thing he's going to go after is from the shoulder to the arm. So he's going to generalize this all the way in. So he's going to just one general straight line. On his next one, he's going to be more fussy with it. And so now is what you're going to get is one angle, two angles, 3, 4, 5, 6. All those little changes. But what's important before that is the point of the wrist to the point of the shoulder. This is the big picture. If an artist gets this relationship right, it does not matter what you do in between. You can elongate it. You can be more quick with the angles. It will always work if the relationship works. It's one of the secrets, if you want to call it, to drawing, is you get this big combination first, this big combination, these points. If those are right, what you do in between doesn't matter. You can stretch, I can elongate it, doesn't matter. So we don't normally think this way. I didn't. It's still a challenge to me. But we need to start thinking that way. It's not something that somebody would normally do on their own. This is a learned skill. It does take a while to obtain, but it's worth the effort. So he's showing the envelope with one stage. He's showing the smaller breakups. So 1, 2. On your next page, if you turn to it, or if you want to open it up, you'll see this. And that's where he starts to get into more of the fussy angles of the anatomy, but it's now taking place over this drawing. And then he comes back with number 4, and he comes back with a beautiful contour line. These constructional lines you won't see anymore because he did them all with a 2H pencil. And so they are gone. Now, the next part of your handout, you're going to see 4 pages like this. The first one with a foot, the head. The other one, if I'm remembering right, it's a hand with a knife, and then there's another foot in there. Okay? You're going to choose one of the 4, and then we're going to draw it. I'm going to show you one quickly, just how to get it started and to measure it. So basically, out of the 4, you're picking one. In this one, there's 3 stages, is what I'm going to have you do, which I'm going to show you in a minute. We've got to lay out the notional space of how big this is, height and width, and then we're going to come up with, like he did, the highest to the lowest. We're going to come up with a predominant line, highest point, lowest, and then he begins to block these out with a simple construction and coming up with the envelope. There's his envelope. Once this is done, along with the other lines you see, once you've drawn that with a 2H pencil, then you're going to take this drawing. Now he's using contour lines. You're going to continue to use straight lines. And on top of this drawing, you're going to see different changes. Where here he uses a general line from this point to this point. On the next drawing, he puts the talus bone in there. And so he refines it and he starts to break down the toes. But this drawing will be done on top of your first drawing. So the first drawing is done with 2H, hard pencil. Then you're going to come back with a HB, and you're going to draw the next divisions. And then on top of that, we're going to come back with a beautiful contour line, like on top of that one, like you see here. And you can add the shadow pattern if you would like. It's not mandatory. The very end of this handout, which I did not pin up here, is something for you to read. I need you to read that before you begin this drawing, before you begin any of the drawings today. So I'm going to keep this video going, and I'm going to show you this. But you pause it for a moment, read that article. It'll only take you about 15 minutes, and then come back and turn on the video. Anyways, welcome back. I'm going to be doing the one I just showed you like this of the foot. And is what I did with this drawing, and you can do the same over your handout. You might be able to see it. But is what I did is I put it in a notional space. I put an X in there to find my center, which is going to help structure the measurements. And I would have you do the same. So is what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to measure my height into the width, and when I measure it comes once, twice, gets me beyond the foot to his construction lines. So what I've got to do here is measure my height. I'm going to start my width, and I'm just going to place in a guideline, and just like what I just showed you, I'm going to use your measuring stick. It comes up once. I go here, my first measurement, and just to make sure we're all on the same page, and I'm going to measure it out, and it comes to here. Now, this drawing, when I did it, as I'm going to do it this one more time quickly. So once comes across to there, twice it exceeded it by a little. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to watch that little that it came bigger than, and I'm going to say this. These things don't need to be perfect. They need to be close. I'm going to extend this on this side just because those are going to be where my construction lines will be. So this is now the right relationship for the object. So now we got the height and the width plotted. I'm going to set this stuff down for a moment. If you guys have a ruler, is what I'm going to have you do is go from corner to corner. And we're going to quickly place down to find our center line, and these guidelines will become incredibly helpful. Like I said at the onset, this is all about measuring, and it's going to help you in the end look at objects and see them in a more analytical way. And when we bring these two ideas of this and gesture together, you can come up with very accurate drawings. So anyways, now we have this as our configuration. I do have this over there. Now, is what I'm going to watch is, again, I'm going to kind of guess at some things. I see where this foot, I'm going to make a little dot here, but I can see where this is, and I can rough out the idea. So I'm going to say it comes over about as far as this. And then on my straight line that's running through, is using one general line, you can see it break this construction line about here. And so you can see that break to it. And so is what I'm going to do now is just freehand a line through like this and let it come down. I'll let this one come out. So now we got our first line in place. When I look at the toe on the other side, I'm looking at the thickness. When I look at the thickness, I'm watching the angle from the illustration I'm drawing from, and I'm going to guess at it, say it's about as high as this. And it's at a slight angle because of the way the toe is. And so I'm going to do that. Because his next guideline is going from the highest point, and it's going down to the toe and it exceeds it, should hit roughly the length of this. So is what I'm going to do, I'm just going to jump over to this, and I'm going to place in this line. So I'm going to bring it up to there, bring it across, and our lines seem to be connecting pretty decent. So far we're on the right path. So now we're there. This gives me my thickness. This gives me my height. This is the base. There's a double line for the base if we look at it. And so I'm going to take that from where he's got his construction line or where my box is. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to run it as a thickness through. And so now we've got that place. So now we've got, I'm going to darken this. Well, I don't want to darken it too much. So here's our notional space and the big configuration. Now is what I have to watch, and this is where my guidelines, my notional space, which he doesn't really have here, but you guys are going to do because we're familiar with it. I've got my center line, I've got a halfway point, so I can watch these. So I can say, I can make a little point and say the top of the foot comes roughly to here, and it comes down about that much. So now I can use that as a simple guideline. So I can do this. And then I can say, here's the dot in the center, here's the dot in the center, and then I can watch that. It's following my axis line running through. It's a little bit above and a little bit over, so it tells me it's coming down to here. So those lines underneath now can be great guidelines to figure out what's happening next. This line now that I'm using of the foot is just above my X coming through the box. And so I'm going to watch that. It's just above, and it follows it pretty carefully. Now, there's a break in this foot right here. There's a plane break. It makes a change. When I measure it, it seems to be midway of this cube. And a neat thing about measuring in the past, you can break these cubes down, and it falls roughly right dead center of that cube. So if I run it down, that's the break. That's the break, and the foot just happens to fall there. This is just a little bit above that line, so this is coming down like this. This now makes a plane break, and it makes a slight deviation in angle to the top of the toe that I placed. So it's doing this. So now we get a slight shift in angles going this way. That one would continue. This one's going that way. And it might be hard to see with the guidelines on there, but you can see the triangle in between this and that. So all we're doing is watching those marks. So now we've got our next part broke up. The next one is this plane break coming from the heel. And the heel is now coming at an angle. I'm going to guess in here it's coming, or we could hold the pencil to it, and we can say the heel is crossing over this way. So now we got the angle to the heel on the back of the foot. So now all of this is in relationship, okay, to everything else. Now I'm going to jump down. That's the first illustration. I'm going to look at the next illustration. So mostly what I want to see about this one is what's going on with the toes. When I watch the horizontal line he places in, it looks about midway of this line. So I'm going to look for my midway point. So it's about here. That midway point, he places in a horizontal line like this, representing the top of the toes, okay? And it comes out a little further than this line here. The first toe, when I watch this angle coming through, he takes it like this. The angle follows the angle that I've got. And then what happens is it angles up ever so slightly. You might not be able to see it well because it's a subtle line. But anyways, the upper big toe angles up a little, as you know. And then this one comes to my guideline, my edge of the box, because the toe curves out. And then it's going to angle in like this. I'll try to get these lines dark so you can see them. So the big toe gets placed in there. The first toe is coming, oh gosh, I would say not quite midway, but about here of this big toe, and it ends midway of it. So watch toes, because they're tricky in perspective. So this is the line for the next toe. Then we're going to go after the next toe. And now I'm seeing it on the construction line above. And when I look at it, it's about right here. And the angle, watch the angle, it's coming this way. And when it gets down there, it gets down, goes down just a little further. Toes are going to get a little wider and wider. I'm going to get this one in place. From the big toe over the base, this little base that it's on, there's an angle because the toes come out at us at an angle like this. So I'm going to bring that angle down close to the bottom of our construction line. And then I'm going to go for the next toe, and it's going to start about here. This time it angles this way, and then down a little more this way. Slightly lower than the prior one. And then I'm going to look at the next one, and it starts about here, and then it's going to widen down like this. Takes a little, again, remember straight, convex, concave. This drops down below the first edge of the platform, and then we're going to go to the little toe, which is starting high, right there, angles in a little bit, and then once we get it angled in, the bottom of it drops just a little bit of the foot and angles across. So then I'm going to take the angle I've got there and cross it over to the bottom of the foot, and then the arch of the foot is going to be here, over and down. And then that's going to meet our, this is going to stop here at the back of the foot, and this is going to come through. So it's going to give us the placement of the toes, the base. The bottom of the base here will be here, and then the foot will just make its angle right here for the heel. Okay. One last thing that we see up there, there's a slight bump here. So we've got the low point. It's going to straighten up ever so little like this, and then continue its journey down to where it went. So there's a slight high point to the foot, giving it its turn. Then if you want, you can place on any of the other little construction lines. In other words, this is going to angle. Now if you look at it, it's going to angle down a little bit. Follow the edge of the shadow pattern is what it is. Bring it through and watch him. He's got them all laid out with straight lines, so it's easy to kind of figure. It's going to get very narrow as it gets around the heel, and the shadow is going to angle this way. Okay, and so that's your simple construction. There's little variances up here. That's going to be the simple construction of that particular drawing from the handout. So, what you're going to do is stop the video, and you're going to pick one of those 4 drawings, and you're going to do exactly the same as I did from it. Okay? And then when you resume it, we're going to start working from actual objects. Welcome back. What we're going to be doing now is working from an actual object. So this next stage of the process, you're going to be working from individual objects. And so now you're going to take a object that you can find around your house that has a little bit of an interest to it, something a little better than an apple, and something that has a little bit of shape to it. So the one that I'm going to use is this fella standing here that you can see. And we're going to now do the same thing from reality. The hard thing from reality is there's depth. It's no longer 2-dimensional. The same things are going to apply. I'm going to look for my center line. I'm going to start off with a center line like this. I can see it's coming through the center of his body, the center of his base. And so I'm going to start that in that fashion. So I'm going to start with a center line. Once we have a center line placed, trying to think of where that center line actually is, and it's very close to the pit of his neck here on his head, then I've got to determine is how big is this head. So if I take a head and I bring it down, it comes once, twice, 3 times to the top of the base. So I'm going to divide this in thirds. So I'm going to guess at it like you will, and then you're going to measure. So I've got 1, 2, I've got to get down as far as that. So I'm going to have to make this a little bigger. So keep doing it till you get it, the proportion to work real close. So I think I'm going to go with that. So I'm going to edit that, take that way. And there's my first. There's my second. So you can see it clear. And just to make sure, we're going to come down here. Now, this represented this, the top edge. So just so that, I got to make sure my lines are straight. I don't stand exactly in front of it. My lines could get very crooked. So bear with me for a minute. And so we got to come up with the bottom of that base. So it's going to be like that. So now we've got that start. Now, that's our tall vertical axis. Now what's our widest horizontal? It's going this way, and it's a diagonal through the shoulders. So then the question is where is that line? So if I take from the top of his head to the pit of his neck, if I take from the top of the pedestal, it's about midway. So if I go from the top of the pedestal, we'll guess in between these thirds, and we'll take, that should be close, and so we're going to say it's here. I do see an axis line to it tilting this way, so there's a slight angle to it like this. So I want to watch that angle. So now we're getting our tallest and our widest. The question is, how wide is our widest? And so now if I take the widest and measure it, and maybe go up from the bottom of the base, it seems to, it seems to come up a little bit into the neck. So is what I'm going to do is take it like this, measure it, pretty close to where I've got it, I believe. So this distance seems to work into this distance, so that's very close. My next move is going to be to kind of think a little bit about the width of the head. So I'm watching where it goes. It looks like it's 50-50. The break is on the head here. So just to simplify everything, I'm going to start it off kind of square, even though it isn't. I'll put a slight angle to it because it looks like there is one. I'm going to simplify an angle to a nose like this. And then I'm going to simplify it to from beneath the nose, going this way for the features, moving in this direction, and looks a little too wide, so I'm going to try to do it by eye first, which you will do the same. This angle from the head to the hair seems to angle down a bit like this. The back of the head, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to keep it straight. And I'm going to measure the head. And when I measure from the tip of the nose to the widest, it seems to go from the shoulder to the middle of the neck, which is what everybody's head is. Usually the cranium goes from there to the middle. That looks close. That looks very close. So the width ended up working out without too much problem. The angle of our chin is doing this. So I want to get, here's our measuring using your stick, coming across, getting your angles. I can see the hair does this. Now, what I want to watch is where the eye is. So when I measure up with where the eye is and measure up, let me get a better measurement, almost midway. So again, we're going to find midway. So if I can take from here to there, get midway, we're close. And I watch my severe angle that I see doing this. Now I'm going to let this line go over that a little bit, like this. That angle does that, maybe even stronger. This angle of the hair does the same. And as what I begin to find is from his eyebrow to his hair in the front, it makes underneath that hair on top of his head, tied up, there's an angle here. Again, all straight lines, so there's an angle going this way, gets to the top of his head that I see, straight, and then of course it's going to make an angle this way. Now, before I go too far with that, is what I'm wanting to do is watch the envelope around the whole thing. So if I watch the shoulder and I run the line up, now this is neat to do with lines. This is a classical idea. If I take that shoulder and run it through his head, where do I go? And it seems to, from my angle now, it seems to come up to here. So if I take this line and run it as a guideline, I'm going to be pretty close to where that line is going to move. If I take the line of his shoulders on this side and run it through, for me it seems to follow his jawline somewhere about like this, and they seem to meet right about there. So that's going to give me that construction. If I take from the shoulders to the very center, designers do this with bottles, as you're going to find out, dead center, and take this to dead center, you see they come together. So I can use this as a measurement, dead center, and I could take this angle and run it through. I can know that that's going to be fairly accurate, and run this through as we measure. That's going to be fairly accurate. Now we've got a configuration of height working to the width, placement of the head is working, and it's all blocked out. This distance coming across this distance of my heads, I'm going to take it and measure the head down again. I see his chest is a little lower. This was my head measurement length. So it's all measurements. The chest is a little lower, like this. So now I'm going to block that out. Now I've got something to measure off of. So when I take the bottom of his chest and go up vertical, it's just outside of his nose. So there we are. So you, in your drawing, keep these guidelines in your drawing. This line goes up. This line goes just outside of his hair. So when I do it, it tells me this is probably now pretty close to symmetrical off my center line, and it is. So now we've got that in place. So then as we develop the shoulders, things should work pretty good. I'm going to block out a little bit of that first block that's in there, and is what I'm going to do is watch the width of the base. So if I take the corners and come up vertical, when I look at it from my angle, it's about here on the shoulder, so I'm going to say this is close. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect, it needs to be close. From my angle here, it's the back of his neck, so pretty close to here should be right. I will bring it up. So if I got it close, it should be pretty much halfway, and so everything's lining up. So this lines up pretty close to the back of his neck. This lines up just outside of his nose. So it tells me that eventually when I bring my lines and watch my angles like this, hair coming out a little more, that will fall exactly in the right spot to that. So power of angular lines, it takes a lot of measurements. However, you can get accuracy. So this arm is coming in, and then the angle of his chest I know will meet there. This one is going to, what does it do? It's at my eye level. So it's going straight here, and then it does what this does. It angles in, so that's in the right place. This, if I take from corner up, or I could take the triangle of the base and bring it to the middle, like from there to there, I can get another triangle. So I could do this to this. So I'm going to widen it just a little bit. So let's do it like this. So I will keep it this way. So this way to this way. So we're going to place a triangle in there. So I'm putting a triangle in there because I see a triangle. And this triangle will do this. They're pretty close. So that's our first block out. We've got all of our major lines in place. This is what you're going to do with your first block out. All of my proportions work, and the height to the width, and there are no inside lines yet. I'm going to break it down just a little further for you with some of the inside lines, which would be then the next stage. This would be done with a 2H pencil. Then you'd be coming back over it with a 2B or HB, or start with a 2H, go to a HB. So anyways, I've got this angle going. I've got the angle of the nose in place, and I'm going to look at the angle of the nose underneath, and it goes this way. And this construction from the philtrum to the chin, forget the mouth sticking out, just go for this angle. The reason we go for that angle, because it tells me where the chin is in light of the philtrum, if you're doing a head. Then I can take the mouth and say it overlaps this, and the angle would do this. So the upper lip would overlap like that, and then the lower lip would be in a little bit like this. And then now they're in right place to the chin, and then the chin I know only comes out as far as my construction line, and all of that now should be in the right place. And it should go pretty easy then once you get these big construction lines in. The angle of his neck cuts this way, and then what will happen is I'm going to watch this collar because it's a big part of the design. So this is going this way. Watch your angles. I'm trying to sight them kind of quickly. I know that's got to come down to that way, and then this is going to move over. Watch your angle. Watch where the plane break makes its change. It's way over here. Keep checking it. This is going to cross over his shoulder this way and then move back this way. These would be done for you guys with stronger lines, okay, so that they can be seen more easily. The thickness of the material on his shoulder would come up. I'm not going to place in a lot of details on this, but I am going to go for this next placement. So I would do that. You will do the same, and then this is going to come up over, and you get the little medallion here on his shoulder, and then off we go. This is going to come down. Where does the plane break? It's almost middle of his face, so I got to watch where I'm going. And how low is it? It's only about as low as this, and then over to the shoulder. Eventually, you're going to get a few folds, and I'll keep it very general, okay? So that becomes our next part to the problem. With a face, we would take a little bit of this angle of our turn. You'll follow it there, and then you watch the bridge of the nose. And again, I'm not going to add too many more lines. We're going to stop on this one. The plane break from the side of the nose to from the top of the nose, the cheek angle. You can see a highlight there. Place it in. What is it doing? I mean, I could run it all the way through to the chin, and then it begins to make a change right about here as it gets down. So you can place in all those subtle lines, and it'll begin to break it up for you more in terms of reality. The last thing that I want to do is watch the side of this kind of cone shape, and it's going to come right about here. So I'm going to place that in so that the cone will start right where it does, where it ought to. And the same on this side. And then we're going to get our feel of our curve coming in here like this, but you're going to use all straight lines. The cube that's sitting here, for me it goes back about this far. I get a little bit of an edge in perspective. This is coming this way, and this one is angling back this way. So then you would put on some of the finishing things in order to develop it further. Okay. And I'm going to leave it at this point. Okay. Angular lines, your first object. So what you're going to do is pause the video, and you're going to take an object and draw it as we have just done. Okay, so remember your first big guidelines. I'm going to break down one more object for you. Our last little object we're going to look at, at least get you started with, I'm going to play with the feel of this duck and just how to do something that's a little different. So with this one, again, we have to do the same thing. We have to find what is our height to what is the width. And if I go in there once, twice, it exceeds it a little bit. So I'm going to do the same thing when I start this. I'm going to start height. So again, we can take our height once, and it's going to come to here. We go twice, it's going to exceed it a little bit. So I think I'm pretty close. I want to get that measurement though a little more accurate. So there's once, twice comes to here. I'm going to make a little mark. So is what we're going to do is take our once, do it again, and measure it out. So this is working good, so that will fall in place here. So again, here's your notional space. Try to get these lines accurate. So again, so you know what I did, because usually a lot of people have a hard time with this. I took the height of the object, just like you did with the art print last class. I measure it once, twice it exceeded it a little. Now, did I measure that little? No. It's close, as you can see. It came out to about here. So the first thing then that I do is I'm going to take a center line through its neck. And when I take a center line through its neck, it's hitting, some of you will see it a highlight, but it hits here where the head makes a plane break. For me, that's center line. So where is that center line is going to be the question. So if I take that distance and I say it's right there, so I've got it measured, and then I come out, it comes out once, twice gets me real close to the end of this feather. Almost perfect, not quite. So it's broken in thirds to this point. So the question is, where is that point? So I'm going to guess at that distance again, and I'm going to say it's here. If you're not sure of something and you think maybe this is too big, too short, I mean, I'm erring on being a little too big rather than too short. I could have made it smaller. But now I know I could divide this in thirds, and I've got that measurement. So what I'm going to do is try to estimate this, and we will guess like you will and go once, twice, 3 times. We're real close, so I'm going to have to bring it over ever so slightly and keep going till you get it right. There's 2, that gets it. So now we've got very close to our placement going across horizontally as a point of measure. So I'm taking the halfway point, this guideline, which is my height line, which is now representing this, and I'm using that as my point of measure coming across, right? You've got to find something in the object in order to make that work. Now, the next thing is what is this distance? Because I want to take the head as a measurement. So if I take the head as a measurement, like that, and I measure it, I could come down, and I come down once, I'm right about at the bottom of the neck, twice. So again, it's thirds. So I'm going to guess at this as thirds. So you want to check your object, and whatever comes the closest to is what you want to get. It wants to be close. Like I'm saying, it does not have to be perfect. So there we go. So now I know a lot of things. So I've been measuring like crazy, but I know this line extends here. This is a little higher, but it's where the neckline is. So I can safely do this. And I could run that line technically all the way through. Now I know that the head is going to fit in here, but where is the head? My guideline is through the center of the neck. So what I'm going to do is I look at his chest, because that sticks out, and I see it's about midway between there and there. So what I'm going to do is you can find midway of these cubes very easily if you want to do this. So I know this is midway, so I can now take a construction line that does this. Now, that's seen from my center to the chest, going in this direction, and the angle's pretty close. So that gives me a guideline for that. This head I know is going to come down to here, and when I look at his head to his beak, where it changes, again, it looks like it's from my center line, it's truly halfway. So I'm very fortunate with this measurement. This guideline falls on a midway measurement, so I know the head is here, the beak is here. So now I can kind of loosely start to construct the feel of this head. And my guideline for center is here, which means this line off my center is going to come over a little bit like this. And when it gets to be about here, I see an angle coming down like this. So I can take that. So if that's right, and this is my center of my neck, then I know the neck is going to do this, and it's going to pull out, say, from my angle, should follow my guideline pretty close. And on this side, this is my center line, of course. Watch our angles. One angle, try to dissect it into simple angles. Two angles, it's on the bottom, so I'm going to take an angle from here to here. So I'm going to do that with it. So now we're trying to get a nice sense for the neck. Angle of our top part of the head to the beak, if I just generalize its direction, it's like this. So it tells me it's going to hit about here. This is a general direction. This on the bottom of his face is straight. Like we said, it goes about midway of our box. And then I'm going to get its angle. Its angle is doing this. So we're going to do this with it. Hits it about there. So it actually will angle back this way, of course, once it's in place. Now, this was our simple guideline of getting our simple direction, but when I hold it up against there, you see it's not just that. So while I'm here, I'm going to break it down a bit. So as what happens is it comes in more, like that, and we'll check it. And it comes in about midway, and then it makes a turn like this. So my first guideline, you can leave your first guidelines in. Mine, if I put it in there lightly just for you to see, would look like this. So now this is going down, makes its break about midway, and so now we're pretty good shape for the feel of the head. Okay, so he's pretty close. The chest is going to follow my guideline. So this is going to come up. Now I got to reduce it to planes. It's a curve. So I can see one major plane break here. So I'm going to do this with it. And I'm going to bring it out to my fullest point. And I'm going to take one underneath. So I'm going to break it up into 3 planes. 1, 2, 3. So you're going to have to reduce yours to something. 3 planes, 4 planes, but it's going to make the difference ultimately in the end. This is going to ride along the bottom. This we know is here, From my angle, it rises up in the back, and when I look at it, it's not perfectly straight, angles down. So I got to figure out how high that is. And so I'm going to watch the distance. There's an angle in here like this. I will place the angle. And then the top of it is high, and it seems to come down a little bit. So it's going to do this. And that should be pretty close. So now it's giving us our outline. We know that this point was this point. The feather I see further away is back further. So what I'm going to do is take this angle and carry it through to this edge. So what I got to do is get the thickness for this, which is falling right about there. And then it's angling down ever so slightly like this. And then there's a top plane to it going this way. Again, watch our general construction lines. It's going this way. And then this is going to curve back and meet it. I'm going to take a general line to pick up the other feather. And he's back there, not much, very subtle, and cuts at an angle back like this. So the other one's back in there like that. So what I'm going to do is place another angle. Now it's in perspective, so I've got to be careful. I've got this point here. For me, to my angle, this is here. This is a little bit to the right. So I got to raise up another angle and put a plane that rises. And then I'm going to get a general construction line going this way. This is going to be my top plane connecting to this. And then this ultimately on the side has got to be a side plane. This is going to angle this way and come across for our top plane, and it's going to run all the way through. Hard to see, but there's a plane break between here and here. So I'm putting in now some inside planes to this guy. There would be a center line that would be way over here, and then this would take an angle going back, and then this one would come forward, which would give me the curve I'm looking for. Once we get into perspective, we'll talk a little more about that. This piece does just like what we've got it doing. It's going here, stops shy of the edge, hits this way. And then this line is going to pick up the edge, come down. There's going to be a little bit of a thickness like this. Again, watch your angles. So I get one thickness that way. It changes again this way. I've got to watch them. I think that's too steep. It is. Keep checking those angles. I'm saying this for my benefit. And then it goes even down steeper like this. So these angles are very subtle, very subtle. So you've got 1, 2, 3. This one might still be a little too steep. So I'm going to play with it. There they are. So I got 3 slightly different angles is what we're looking for. So if this one continued, it would do that. If that one continued, and this one coming down. So they're going to do that. So this is going to come down about here at the edge of this feather, close, probably about like that. So anyways, that's the outline of them. I'm going to have you with this last one you do. We're going to break up a little more of the inside. So now I'm going to watch every angle I make is a plane break. So I'm watching this carefully. I'm watching that carefully. So in the end, I can place another angle on the inside of this one like this and curve this. And that's now going to give me a surface that angles down like this, okay, on his cheek. This, if I straighten it up, that's a flat one. This is going to then angle in this way, and this would make it bulge out, okay? So you're going to place in these surface planes. The eye is going to be placed back a little further, say about here. Better really watch out where I place them, Dan. Right there. And from that eye, we almost got this constructed, you guys, so bear with me. There's a plane break. As you see a highlight, highlights are indications of plane breaks. We're going to put this one in here because ultimately there's a top plane here on the top of his head, like that. This is curving this way. This is dropping this way. So I'm going to have you watch those surfaces. This is falling around his beak. I'm going to try to get it as dark as I can for you. And then it wraps like a duck's face would go. His beak makes a turn right there. And these lines then ultimately connect as a plane break. So you're going to do that sort of thing. On the neck, I've got a plane break here, which is going to tell us the angle that that's about to turn in. This is coming up, so this angle is doing this. This is straight. This is angling this way. Okay, so you kind of get the idea. So you're going to place those plane breaks in. On his chest, now that I got it broke up into 3 divisions, I've got to say this isn't straight. It can't be parallel. It's coming out at us. So you got to watch. How is it coming out at us? So you place them at the plane breaks. This is crucial, you guys. Place these inside planes now. This has got to come this way. That's got to come that way. If I've got 3, it tells me this is this way. This is this way. And now this is angling under. And at a certain point, it's going to wrap around. So this angle is going to transition to another angle, to another angle, another angle, to this angle. And these, you got to watch them. They're going to go this way. They're going to start to straighten out as they get to my eye level. And then eventually they're going to come across. And this could be handled at the angle of the plane this way, or I could handle it at this angle, or both, in order to get the feel of what direction is it. This angle is this way, which has got to tell me this is my center. So that means these angles are crossing. I'd have to be careful because they're going to change direction up there as they turn in space, so they're going to go that way. They're going to curve around this way and come around for the fullness of how this body is of the duck. And when it gets down to the bottom, it's going to start to follow this plane. So I'd have to keep all of these ultimate curves in mind to how the feel of this duck ultimately will roll and curve. Okay. This is my guideline, but this is a surface, and the surface is going this way. And then it straightens out as it starts to move more this way and turn this way. This is going vertical. So all planes. Now, on our next class, we're going to play with this much more in depth. I do want you to do one like this, however, to get the sense of it. In our next class, we're going to take a look at how to hatch in lines. Right now, suggest at them, but I do need the plane breaks and breaking the inside down with surface plane break divisions. These are plane breaks where one plane meets another. I need to see in this last drawing, I need to see those angles in the drawing. I need to see the inside angles. Don't just do the outside. Get involved with our inside angles. I know in this one there are some other things, but I got to stop now. I'd have to break these down to straight lines that I'm seeing, and then I'd reduce all of that into straight lines as well. So I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it this way. Have fun drawing. Take your time with it. I know it's frustrating at the beginning, but we will carry it through. You're going to find it very beneficial in the days to come.